make you aware that it is configured and that they're supposed to be using that GM, but we've already tested this. So here in the lab and other facilities. So if anything doesn't really work from their perspective, from my perspective, it should be based off like some of these like DNs and the host and certain authentication setup like the domain, like different things like this that are probably be messed up. Um, like these things, the bind user DN. I don't anticipate you having to mess with that. I just want to make you familiar with everything that we're using in this framework. Um, then this one here, we created this one. This is for them to be able to use the RFID scanner on the bottom of the HMI. So what we did is we created a extension that basically emulates the LDAP, but it does some things underneath because it's using their badge ID number. So we had to do this. We had to create a separate extension for it because just standard LDAP wouldn't handle it without a password. So it shouldn't really be anything there that you'd have to mess with. If anything came up, we would just probably be asking for like, maybe to get the logs of the errors or anything like that, so that we can analyze things.
Okay.
But mainly either in here or, on the server itself. Um, but so that's really what this does. And this has its own base like search area that we have to target within their Active Directory. Um, this should be configured, but Colin, when he comes, he should be getting this from either the team in Mexico at GM or the global, they call them cyber guys. I call them IT, but they want to be called cyber. So the global cyber guys. And then we also use the Logix driver, which this is relatively new. That we've been going through and iterating over and over again, like making it better. Should already come with the latest. This should already be set up. This is just Colin will know the IP address of his PLC and all that. He's pretty familiar with setting all this up. I just wanted to give you an idea of what you're going to be looking at so you know. Um, but basically, this is like your target slot. So this is where like the Ethernet port is that he's talking to. That's the rack and slot that he's talking to in the Rockwell PLC. He should have that like it, and you shouldn't really have to mess with this at all. And then his IP address, and then here, this is we pretty much standardize on a tag structure, like what tag we're reading. So this shouldn't change either. So this is the tag that we'll be pulling in to build the HMI front end. So that's really all that's in here. And then there's a diagnostics tab here that tells you if you're connected or not connected. It also tells you which controller and the version. So that's always there too. So, and Colin knows, where to look for that too as well. It's just that, just so you're familiar, if you ever get any questions or, if you have to help. This is the first thing I look if there's no tags. Okay, are we connected? If it's false, that means you're not talking to it. So either the IP is wrong or something's going on with the network. And just so you know, the LDAP has the same thing. If you go to diagnostics, it'll tell you here whether it's connected, and then it'll tell you the TCP connection. And then if it's all connected, there'll also be another third line here that says bind user. And that'll either be true or false. So like that means like the bind user is the person or the account they use to be able to search the Active Directory to log people in and out. So that should be also true if it's logged in. Like all those things have to be connected and both true for that to work. So that's just a place where you can go and look quickly and say, oh, okay, this is why they're not being logged in through, logging in with the GM account is because of this or that, or the badge scan is not working. Now the badge scan takes all the information from the LDAP server. So all this login authentication information, all this stuff here, it basically, we don't show it but we just basically duplicated in our badge authentication extension, but it's just held in memory inside the extension. We don't really show it. So all this information is pulled in from there, from here into the badge auth. And then from there, it's just that, the servers there, that's pretty much standard, nothing really changed there. But a lot of these are things that not everyone uses every day within the HMI framework. So I just wanted to make sure that, you're aware that they're using authentication and badge scan, the ability to badge scan to actually log in. So they have that, we built in all that capability for them. So we'll just kind of move down the tree here. Something in properties, references. I mean, those are just the packages we're using, but those should all be good. Then we have our JavaScript functions. So these are the functions that we wrote to kind of help through the HMI. I don't know if you're familiar with JavaScript or use it a lot. I don't anticipate you really having to dig into any of these, but just in case, like this is the badge listener. So this is what we use to listen for like the badge scan. So that's the code that handles this. It's a code behind. And we basically have an active listener that looks for like a key down, like so it acts like a keyboard wedge. And then that's what this code does. We've tested this; it doesn't have a problem, so should be working fine as far as we know, unless something comes up or you guys see something weird. But like I said, we've tested it pretty good here in the lab and also at least one of the plants. And it's worked fine. So this right here, this code right here, this is called the bind user settings. And all this does is what we're doing here is we're binding all the user settings by footprint. And I'll show you this when we go through the graphics part, because I'll just show you the HMI graphics part. I'll just walk through. But the settings pages are local. Some of the settings are local to each footprint itself. So there's settings that are by footprint. And then when you set them, it triggers a variable in the PLC within that footprint that he has in his PLC, because we just display stuff more or less and do things in the background. He provides us with most of the data, behind it. So if we set any kind of setting, particularly, it usually goes back to the PLC and sets a bit, and then he sends us like a confirmation back that we use to display things. But that's been working pretty seamlessly. Haven't had really any issues unless the tags don't show up, or it doesn't see the tags or something weird like that's going on. We haven't had that happen very much. So every now and then if he changes his data structure or something weird like that, like he'll have to refresh the tag list, or you would have to refresh the tag list. But that's what this area does. And we kind of do have in front of each function, like where they're called, like what pages. So this is called in the user settings, like content. So down in here, like under user settings content, it'll be called there. And then they're using like the container interfaces, FP index, FP side. So like we try to put in there like where everything's located, where it's called. So that way it helps if anybody has to troubleshoot or go back in here and look. Even myself, after doing stuff, I'm like, oh crap, where's that called? Because I haven't been back there in a while. And then we have this task control. So what this does is this creates all the tasks that are on the front end. And maybe I should just open so you can kind of get an idea. So like this is what the front end screen looks like. So like here, this is where they can change their footprints, and then there's default footprint settings. So like on the assembly line, they have a footprint, and each footprint has a certain amount of tasks in it, and then there's a left and a right side of the assembly line. So, typically, not always, but most of the time there's a left and a right side. So when he configures his PLC, he gives the footprint a name, tells it how many tasks it has, the type of task, and then all the naming, and all that stuff is also all done inside the Rockwell PLC. So just so you kind of have an idea. And then these are the individual tasks based off the footprint. And then this is like a barcode type. This is the torque tool. I don't remember what CU means, or TR. Some of these are ones I haven't seen, but I think you get the point basically. These are the tasks that show up. So when we auto generate, let's see, where was I at? When we go through this task control, this is what we do is we call this for each of the pages. So we generate a left and a right because you always either be on the left or the right side. So it'll call all that information based off that. And so this right here binds all the tags for all those tasks right here. So that's what this JavaScript does right here. So we're dynamically binding everything within the HMI as it's being created. So that's what this script does. And then here we have some helper scripts. So what this does is just it'll parse individual bits. And those are called in certain areas, mainly in the user control areas. And then here we bind the headers. So the header is like this part right here. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, so I didn't like the header is like this part up here. So this we call the header. So this is all the header information.
Okay.
So we bind all that information, and this is all different based off the whatever footprint you select. So if it's a right side, it changes, to whatever, the right side in that particular footprint has. And let's see, and I'll just keep going. So that's what this area does. And that this basically sets all the header bindings, and then they're able to switch in the settings page. Here, let me just turn this off. Here's the settings page, so they're able to turn off certain things, turn on and off certain things here, to like change the way the display looks. The auto log out, they tell you what current user is logged in. These are the servers. And then that tells you the PLC and the name, and then whether it's connected or not here. So we tried to make it pretty basic from the standpoint of, settings and all that stuff. And that's where that's when I talk about the settings page, that's the settings page. And then, so we have this other script that's called the helper script, and this runs in the code behind, and there's a couple of different things in here that happen. Let's see here. So we have like an inactivity timeout setting here that we also do. So we set a default for it, but you can actually set that here now. So I put that in there so that they can set the time to whatever they want. Like if they want it to log out after 10 minutes or whatever, they have the ability to do that globally with the whole system. And then this is where we load all the footprints. And then this is where we detect the inactivity. So like if there's no activity, so we have these event listeners that do that. And then what we do is we have a log out timeout. So it'll automatically log out the user. And then this is just commented out. So that's what that does. And then this is the same thing as the extract bit. This just gets a particular bit within like a cent or an int or whatever. Because we don't have the ability to break the Logix processor down bit by bit. So we can only bring in like cents and all that. So this is how we do that. We don't have to do it a lot, but we had to create these so that we could get those bits. And And then as far as pages, they're broken down, by content. So you have like the user settings page and pretty much like anything that's called in here. Trying to think here. There's a few things in here, just simple stuff. Um, and you can, and I can send this to you if you want to look through it, on your own. Yeah, just so you can look through it, and then maybe if you want to, if you have questions later this week, you can, just ping me again and say, hey, I had a question about this or what this does or what are you doing here, or you can just send me an email. But like in here we have just simple stuff, and these. But if you look at all these different activities, through here, that's why like in the JavaScripts we try to call out like what we're doing. So we know, but like right here, this is like a bind user setting call, function call here, where we're trying to load the footprint index and the side. And what that does is it binds. Why we're doing that is because when they switch a side, what we're doing is we're loading the particular settings for that particular side and footprint. So that's what that does. That's why that was created. Um, and then there's a left and a right side content, and we broke that up by left and right. So we call the left, like if the left is obviously if you pick a left side, then the left content is displayed, and we pull the left side of the assembly line or the right side of the assembly line. And then here we have like login. This is just for the pop-up. So like nothing really going on here other than just like on here we have some functions here that are being called in this area. We're just logging in basic stuff. But you shouldn't have to worry about this. We should be okay on this, I believe. But I just want you to know kind of where this stuff is. And then there's a footprint setting. This is the pop-up for like where you select the footprints. But I don't anticipate, I'm hoping that there's nothing going on there. We don't really use the events, so that's not really a big deal. You can just skip that. And then we just have our basic user controls. So if you go through these, you'll see like a barcode control. And if you flip through the document outline, you'll see like what's there. And you can go through and see how it's binded, and then see all these different calls that are in here, like the different things of how we load everything. And it's mainly we use these to just display various colors and stuff like that. That's really what that stuff's doing. Same here. We created like for the bit toggle, we just created a user control for all those little toggles. Just to make it reusable. This right here is another pop-up that comes up. I created this because they wanted like a confirmation. So what that does is, if we go back, see if I can get a side that gives me the ability to actually do something. Okay, so like, I have to turn that on. So if action confirmation is turned on, what you get is when they go to bypass, oh crap, it only works if I actually touch it. I forgot. Again. So second. Oh, dang it. It keeps doing that to me. I hate that. Because we have it set up for like touching, sometimes it gets finicky. All right, there we go. Oh. Why isn't that working? Must be, I have to figure that out, but Typically what happens is they click bypass, and it might be because it's already in bypass, is
Okay.
what I'm thinking. But what happens is that confirmation pops up. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, see, they're all locked out. That's why. Yeah, he hasn't. They're locked out. I'd have to disable them, but that's part of the problem. But if you hit the bypass, what happens is that pop up, and then they have to confirm basically the bypass, or it does the same for release. So that's what that does. That screen, just so you know what that's doing.
Okay.
Um, and then this pop up comes up, and then you have your conveyor status here, and that's just another user control. Same thing with the header. So we have the header user control. There are some things going in here, like some text display and stuff like that. And there's only one thing going on here, and that's just for what we do is we call the login pop up when somebody clicks that. There's a couple other things like the footprint button is here. And it's all on this screen here on this user control. There's another, this is our task user control. So this is the one where all the tasks are created and then we just repeat it based off a grid. And we create a task for each task that's in the array that we read. And then there's a brief task that he has. I don't know. GM wanted this. They wanted like a brief one. So we created a shorter version, and that can be enabled or disabled. And then they also wanted a torque control display where they display like torque guns, how many times they failed past, that kind of thing. And then, then you have your main view, the desktop view, which basically just has the header and the conveyor status. And then um, within this content section here, that's where we just load the tasks left or right, basically these contents up here, the login or the right and the left content. Um, Trying to think here. So any other stuff would be as far as the tags, the way they're called. We just have like our map symbols, and really, if you go to Logix driver, like this is all the like for me and for my test Rockwell, this is what we're reading, and we're just reading these arrays in here. That's what these are. Just ignore those because these are just things that I had bound, but I'm not really using anymore. But basically, we read these right here, and his PLC will have 100, but I only read like 10 because I'm just doing some minor, just testing. Um, but and then if you look at all these, this is the whole structure. Like it starts to build out, and then you have like your inputs, your outputs. You have your left hand, right hand side here of um, I don't even know what those are. The actual what these data structures do. I just know most of the stuff that I'm pulling or we're pulling is right here between all these footprints. Those are some of you can see like some of the numbers come in like CSN, this number up here, the footprint name, all those things kind of come in through here. And then you have your left hand operator display for the left hand and the right hand. It kind of shows per left and per right side. Um, then I think this right here is your tasks. So like we read all this information here, and then that's what helps us generate the whole screen. So based off how these arrays are configured on his end, um, there's the torque display, and we ended up breaking them out by left and right hand side, or he did. So that's just it seemed to fit better for what we were doing. And then this is where we get some of the feedback for like the task stuff. So if it's task UI, this is like the buttons. So those are like the buttons that we're saying, that when we um for each of the different tasks. So there could be up to like 32 tasks per footprint. So quick down and dirty, that's kind of like some of the structure um, from the Rockwell side and our side and like how we're doing stuff. Um, Obviously you won't be able to really test, like look anything live, but you can look through the program and I mean, if there's any questions or anything, I can answer anything if you have anything. Um, the only other thing, just so you know this, there are some global events that we have programmed here. So we have, um, this is for like when we use a couple things here for when things are logged in. This right here is what we do here is this is where we create and store the default footprints. So we set a local storage variable, which means it's stored within the browser permanently. So that way, when they can set a default footprint, if they have to publish again, it always knows what the default footprint is that it's supposed to be, and then it'll see that it's different and automatically change after a certain amount of time. That's what this stuff's doing right here, and we just do that on every time the screen re-renders. And then here, this is just really this is just checking for if the login the users change for logging in and out. And then what we do is we get the information and display it. So we have to look for a couple different triggers on that. This is for like when the user changed. We also check for the username and input information and display it. And then this right here is the inactivity timeout. So what we do is that timeout I was showing you. What this does is we send a bool to this internal variable, and then we use that to trigger this stuff. So what that does is what it does is when that's true, it'll look for the footprints. It'll also check to see, and then it'll automatically go back to the default footprint. And then it'll check for various usernames. And if they don't match, it'll also it'll log out the user, and it'll also switch to the default footprint side is what it does. So that's what that does.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we use those functions and how we trigger those events. We use some global events for that. I think that's really trying to think if that's all there is. I mean, there's a few there's a few internal symbols here that we use within the program. Not a huge amount. So, I mean, it's not too bad, but like these are all the internal footprint indexes that we use. And then there's temporary ones too that we use. And those are mainly for the pop-up because if somebody goes in and changes the footprint and they say, oh crap, I don't want to do that. And then they close it out. I didn't want to, unless they hit save, it doesn't write it to the actual variables. That way it'll automatically read the original variables back. So it never gets out of sync, from
Okay.
what it's supposed to be. But that's all done inside that footprint content. And like I said, if you kind of take your time and kind of look through it ahead of time, you'll probably start to kind of hopefully, maybe dig in a little bit and kind of find out, or at least look and kind of understand what's going on to a point. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out. Do you have any questions right now in particular?
I think I would like to overview the project. For me, now is clear what we are going to be looking for because
Mm-hmm.
basically you have already done the hard job. We are going to ensure the connections and
Mm-hmm.
diagnose if there is nothing getting to the HMI.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the work is from the deployment standpoint, from my perspective, unless there's some kind of bug we didn't catch in our side of it. Most of it relies on their network, their PLC configuration, like mainly a lot of it relies on what's going on at GM. So, but I know just from deploying some of these already in test areas that like if something doesn't work, it's first thing is always I have to prove that my stuff
Yes.
is not broken first
Absolutely.
because they always blame me.
Yeah, makes sense.
Um, so, I'm just trying to pass along like the things that we've tested and verified, and some of the things that we've ran into. A lot of it has been like IT stuff. I still think there's some network stuff going on the GM side, but I haven't got a chance to really get into it with their cybersecurity guys, because like they're like at Factory Zero, for instance, in Detroit. We had a little bit of like flashing delay when they flash like the lights on the TAS,
Okay.
but if we are in, say, the lab, we don't really have that issue because, I mean, it's a big network too, but we don't have that issue there. And I'm like, well, you're actually in a plant, like a full plant now with their stuff running. And I don't know how they're prioritizing the network there. And our stuff is HTTP, like WebSocket traffic. So I don't know if they deprioritize that. And maybe it's just like, hey, we don't really care about that traffic as much. It goes through when it goes through. So we just been trying to keep an eye on that stuff. So it'd be, if you see anything like that, just take a note of it, or maybe, just let us know, or at least, give us
Absolutely.
maybe, just kind of keep an eye on anything that you see that might not be reacting right. I mean, Colin will point it out to you anyways, more than likely. So, but yeah, just kind of keep an eye on certain things. Those are things that we're trying to iron out now, but we just haven't had a chance to really, um, we haven't put a lot of miles on the system, let's just say, with, quite a few displays. I think Mexico Silo was supposed to be the first pilot and actually have more stations so that we can kind of, give it a good little load test with multiple stations and all that. So, but it's just, we had a hard time getting the parts down there for some reason. Well, I don't know
Yeah,
what was
I
going on
know.
there, but anyways, they're there now. But
Takes some time. Yeah.
yeah, I did. So, but anyways, Alan, I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview. I'll zip the program up and send it to you,
Yes.
and then look at it. And the program that he may go to site with might change slightly just graphically, but the base of it should be the same. I know he's making like cosmetic changes and stuff, but this should be how it's structured for the most part, other than just some cosmetic things that might be changed, from what I can understand. He's kind of doing, our GM's kind of doing on their own. 'Cause he's been doing a lot of cosmetic changes, like how stuff works. We've been doing all the back end stuff up to this point. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I mean, I'll zip this up. I'll send it to you. I can tell you uh, the latest server version it is too. Just I don't know which HMI server you got running, but it is. I can at least pass along that information so you're aware
Yep.
of what versions they are.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't
Um,
want to run on versions issues.
yeah, I'll give that all that. I'll pass along all that info to you, and then with this zip file, and then should be good. And then yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. We can have another meeting, or we can, um, I can go over anything that you have any questions about.
Great. I really appreciate it, Greg. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. And again, sorry about my delay. I was in Detroit all day yesterday. From like, I left my house at like 4:30 or 5:30, and then I was pretty much busy all day until like 10 at night. So just busy all day. So
No
uh
problem. Anyway, you have the chance to meet with me, and I really appreciate it.
yeah, and maybe before Colin goes down there, maybe I set up a meeting and I can introduce you to Colin as well. That way you guys know each other at
Yeah,
least.
that will be really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll let you look over the program, and then maybe and then I'll try to set up a meeting here before the end of the week where I can at least just do a quick introduction, so you guys know who each other is.
Okay, perfect. That sounds
All
good
right.
for me.
Okay. All right, Alan. Well, thanks a lot, man. Have a good day. A good
You too,
rest of your
Greg.
day.
You too,
Yep.
Greg. Bye.
Bye bye.